Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to talk about a way to learn faster that's backed by some serious science. And it all comes down to something we usually try to avoid at all costs: failure.
Yeah, I know, it sounds totally backwards, right? I mean, our entire lives we're taught to get the right answer, to not mess up. But what if embracing our mistakes, what if actually looking for them, was the real secret to unlocking our brain's ability to learn?
So to get this, you first got to understand that our brains basically have two different learning modes. When we're kids, up until about age 25, our brain is in what's called juvenile plasticity. It's like a super sponge. It just soaks things up and rewires itself without us even trying. But then, after 25, that automatic easy mode just shuts off. For an adult brain to change, something has to actively pull the trigger.
And that's the big question, isn't it? If our brains aren't just learning on autopilot anymore, what's the signal? What's the specific thing we need to do to tell our brain, hey, time to change?
Well, the answer is kind of shocking, and it's super simple. It's an error, a mistake, a failure. Your brain is not going to go through all the trouble of rewiring its circuits unless it gets a big, flashing signal that says, hey, what we're doing right now is not working. Failure isn't the obstacle. Failure is the trigger.
There's this classic experiment that shows this perfectly. Scientists got people to wear these prism goggles that shifted everything they saw to the side. So they'd reach for a pen that looked like it was right in front of them, but their hand would land inches away. And here's the key. It wasn't just putting on the goggles that made their brains change. No way. It was the constant mistakes. Every single time they reached and missed, that was an error signal screaming at the brain. Alert! Alert! Our map of reality is wrong. We have to fix it now.
And just look at this chart. The difference is staggering. A kid's brain adapts to this huge error in just a couple of days. But the adult brain? It could take a full month, or sometimes it would never adapt at all. This shows us that errors are the key for everyone. But as adults, we need a whole lot more of them to force that change to happen.
Okay, so we need to make a lot of mistakes. But let's be real. That's frustrating, right? Nobody likes failing over and over. This means the way we think about those mistakes is everything. And a huge study of 50,000 people found this amazing thing they called the Super Mario effect.
So in the study, when one group failed, they were just told, that didn't work, try again. Just like in Super Mario, when you fall in a pit, you just start over. The other group, though, was punished. You lost 5 points. And look at the results. The try again group succeeded way more often. Why? Because the penalty made people afraid to fail, so they just quit trying. The first group felt free to make all the mistakes they needed to actually learn the skill.
So the goal is to generate tons of errors, but without all the stress and anxiety. But before you even start, you've got to get over this first hurdle. Neuroscientist Andrew Huberman calls it limbic friction. You know that feeling when you're too tired to focus? Or maybe too wired and anxious to learn? That's limbic friction, and you have to deal with that first.
So here's how you put it all together in a super practical way. 3 steps. First, get focused. Do whatever you need to do to get calm and alert. Second, generate errors. For about 7 to 30 minutes, just push yourself. Go right to the edge of your abilities until you start getting frustrated. That frustration is the trigger. And then step 3, this is the real secret sauce. You have to reward the effort.
What on earth does that mean? It means you have to consciously, subjectively tell yourself, this feeling of being stuck, it's good. This mistake, that's the fuel I need. When you genuinely praise yourself for the struggle, your brain literally releases dopamine. And that starts to rewire you, to make you crave the very process of getting things wrong, because you know it's leading to growth.
Now, this is where things get really weird and wonderful. It turns out the most important part of locking in a new skill doesn't happen when you're practicing at all. It happens right after you stop.
For about 10 minutes after your practice session, your only job is to do absolutely nothing. I'm serious. No phone, no TV, no music. Just sit quietly. Because in that time, your brain is firing off the things you just learned at 20 times the normal speed, consolidating the memory and locking in the skill. It's a non-negotiable step.
Okay, so that's the basic framework. But if you're thinking, how can I put this on steroids?
Well, there are a couple of advanced ways to really accelerate this whole process and make your brain even more ready to change.
As adults, we really have two main paths to trigger this deep learning. The first is incremental learning. Slow and steady. You stack up lots of small, manageable mistakes over time. The second path is what you'd call high contingency. This is when the stakes are really high, like you have to learn this skill or you'll lose your job. That urgency floods your brain with the chemicals needed for super fast change.
But what if you don't want to create some high-stakes drama in your life just to learn something new? Is there another way? A kind of back door to get that same chemical rush? Well, there is, and it's hiding in plain sight, in your sense of balance.
See, your brain is absolutely obsessed with keeping you upright. It's a top priority. So it's constantly tracking where your head is in space across 3 planes. Pitch, which is nodding yes, yaw, shaking your head no, and roll, tilting your ear to your shoulder. Any mistake in this system is a fundamental error signal the brain takes incredibly seriously.
And here's the hack. When you challenge your balance, think about doing yoga or trying to skateboard or learning a new dance move, your cerebellum freaks out a little. It sends an alert that tells your brain to release the perfect learning cocktail: acetylcholine for focus, norepinephrine for alertness, and dopamine for motivation. It's like you're chemically priming your brain to learn.
And this brings us right back to the beginning. This is why kids learn so easily. They're always running, jumping, spinning, falling down. They live in a state of constant, tiny balance errors. They are literally bathing their brains in the chemicals of change all day long.
So the big takeaway here is pretty profound. We can tap back into that super fast learning state, not by trying to be perfect, but by doing the exact opposite, by intentionally looking for the struggle. So I'll just leave you with this thought. What incredible things could you learn? What skills could you master if you started seeing frustration not as a sign to stop, but as the signal that you're just getting started?